Before we begin, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Federalism Timeline, voted #1 most endorsed by diverse ethnic or language groupings. With great power comes great responsibility. That's why some of our powers are concurrent. Federalism, a divided sovereignty with a common goal. Now back to the show. We start off in 1789, when the first Congress convened. There were disagreements on power distribution, as the state and federal governments had separate and distinct jurisdictions and responsibilities. There was a general notion of national government supremacy over the states. Dual federalism, government was small and mainly dealt with foreign affairs and money. It raised revenue through tariffs and protected industries from competition. Also, the federal government provided a common currency and protected patents. States covered most of the governing, though, by handling economic regulation and other laws. Laws concerning private property were only in states. In this time period, the federal government was used to identify a problem. It would set up a basic outline of a program to address the problem, and then made money available to fund that program. Much of the responsibility for implementing and running said program went to the states and localities. This was designed to encourage states to pursue nationally defined goals. Also known as picket fence federalism, centralized federalism gave more power to the federal government. One example was in the form of categorical grants. These required states to have an agency monitoring the grant and obey federal guidelines. Categorical grants had strings attached and were very narrow. An example of a stronger federal government is an unfunded mandate. This is when the federal government requires that a state perform an activity or service without funding from the national government. During New Federalism, there was a shift to give more power to the states. Block grants, states had more leeway with the money received. This came from a belief that the states should receive more power and authority but less money from the federal government. Part of the devolution revolution. Basically, devolution is a transfer of power from the central government to the lower levels. In the 1960s, people questioned why states even existed, but now, states proceeded to regain strength. In today's government, we have what is known as ad hoc federalism, the process of choosing a state or nation-centered view depending on political or partisan convenience. This led to the adoption of flexible strategies, which includes partial preemptions, waivers, and opt-outs. In the beginning of federalism, there were disagreements on who was top dog. Even though the national government held supremacy, the majority of the affairs were ran by the states. After seeing that the states were unable to handle big projects, centralized federalism arose. With categorical grants and mandates, the federal government gave money to the states to make sure that nationally defined goals were pursued. This power would later come back to the states in 1980, with the federal government taking a step back and letting the states handle programs. Grants were still given, but they came with less restriction than before. Currently, America has shifted away from a one-size-fits-all system. The majority political party in office will delegate the power more on a case-by-case basis.